Hello there. Essay here again. In a few short days, it will be the 60th anniversary of the assassination of John Fitzgerald Kennedy. Now, strangely enough, I was around back then. Of course, I was a baby sitting there in my pooped out diaper. But yeah, I was sucking air back then. In fact, I remember my mother telling me that the time period from his assassination to his burial was three of the worst days she ever experienced. She never forgot those days. She said it was just terrible. Unbelievable. Of course, I never experienced a presidential assassination, though I did come pretty close when Hinckley took a few pock shots at Reagan, but regardless. But no, this video is not about the Kennedy assassination. No. No, this video is about the news in general. Now you say, so what, right? Yeah, well, let's just say news has always been important, even though the word didn't really exist till the 14th century. In fact, that word news is basically a old English variation of the word new, and it basically got spread out throughout various cultures over the eons. From the French, I think it was nouveaux, and the German Neues, even the Russian word, which is still used today, nocius or novius. Well, I can't speak Russian, so there you go. And what is news? Well, it's basically chronicling the history of whatever's happening in the moment. Indeed, we've always had chroniclers throughout history. Indeed, the very name history comes from Herodotus, some Greek guy, existed, I think it was around the 3rd century BC. Yeah. And in fact, wasn't for Thucydides, we never would have known about the Peloponnesian War. Or Cicero, wasn't for him, we never would have known about the fall of the Roman Republic and the rise of the empire. Or even the Italian dude, Leonardo Bruni, existed sometime during the Renaissance. He was the first guy who coined the phrase antiquity, Middle Ages, and modern times. Before that, it was just a jumble of cascade of human chroniclers. Now, of course, this beginning to sound like a history lesson, but I'll get to the point. But first, I have to tell you something. Do you find that internet porn and OnlyFans isn't what it's cracked up to be after all? Do you feel that the whole world has gone crazy and you just want it to go away and leave you alone, and you have no way of making it happen? Well, guess what? I got a deal for you. Hello there. Essay here. And when I'm not making a fool of myself saying what I really think on a computer, I'm also a published author, and I got a deal for you. Glitch, a precarious duo, and Glitch, the future is unwritten. And right now, they're both on sale for 99 cents. That's right, no bullshit. And the sale is good through Black Friday. That way, if you're too bloated with turkey, it's okay. You can wait an extra day to blow your money. Now, I'll give you the quick elevator pitch. That way I won't bore you with the details. Sandra is a 15-year-old fashion model with a lot of problems. And Ike, he's a Gulf War veteran who is the last man standing after a deadly jewel heist. But the two of them, through a quirky set of circumstances, end up on a journey across the Southwest while John Law is pursuing both of them. Now, I'm not some one-hit wonder. I got other books coming down the pike. So, if something mysterious doesn't fall out of the sky on my head, you'll be seeing those books too. Now let's get back to the video. Okay, now we got that little bit of business done. Yeah, well anyway, the point of this video is the modern era. Because anyone who tries to pay attention to what's happening in the world knows that we have various sources. We have television. We still have newspapers, magazines, radio, even. And of course we have the internet. Now the thing is, the funny thing about the internet is that when it was first conceived, it wasn't really conceived as a form of transmitting the news. No, it was originally designed as a government experiment. And please, don't even bring up Al Gore, okay? Just don't. No, because when the ARPANET was developed back in the 1960s, it was just designed as a communication tool to communicate between various universities. You know, it was set up by the Department of Defense. No one thought about transmitting information across it. Nobody. Indeed, it wasn't until the 1990s when the Daily Telegraph used the internet to transmit information about the 1994 California earthquake, you know, the one in Northridge. And later on, other outfits like, say, the Oklahoma City Daily and used it to transmit information about the Oklahoma City bombing, you know, the one that about the Timothy McVeigh. Yeah. Well, anyway, nowadays, thanks to the advent of the, you know, smartphones and GoPros, we have all sorts of people running around declaring that they're the next D.H. Melnick. And of course, this is where we run into a lot of problems. Because just recently, if you were paying attention, we recently had a breaking news. And it wasn't broken by CNN or MSNBC or CBS or ABC or Fox News or even the New York Times, Washington Post. You know who broke that news? It was, are you ready? Steven Crowder. Now you say, who the hell is that? Well, let's just say this. He doesn't work for the New York Times, Washington Post, that's for sure. He broke the news on the so-called manifesto of that crazy person who shot up that Christian school in Nevada. And you say, well, so what? Well, this is what this story is about. He officially is not a journalist, okay? He officially doesn't have a press card that says I is a journalist. And yet, he found a piece of news that nobody else could get their hands on. And he released it. And then, of course, 5 seconds afterwards, Fox News, the New York Times, the Telegraph, the Daily Mail, the New York Post, and all the other alphabet networks followed, then repeated what he initially broke. And you say, well, hey, that's a pretty good snazzy bit of news work. You figure that guy should be up for a Pulitzer, right? Well, wrong. You know what happened? Before you could say Joe Blow, every post that he put on Google, particularly YouTube, was removed. Why? Don't know. But if you are a thinking man, for bullshit reasons. And then you say bullshit, yeah. And then you say why? Don't know. And it wasn't just him either, because Jeremy from the Quartering, he recently made a video complaining about what happened to him. He basically was just reporting on what Steven Crowder had reported on about the manifesto of this crazy killer. And he complained recently that his videos were taken down as well. But wait for it. Are you ready? Videos made by CNN, Fox News, ABC, NBC, CBS, they're still up there. Yeah, you can go on YouTube right now and see them. But the guy who broke the story, and a lot of these, to be quite nice about it, non-journalists, their videos are all taken down. And indeed, Jeremy from the Quartering said the bullshit excuse he was given was that he shouldn't be promoting violent content. And of course, he knows that's a bunch of malarkey, using a Joe Biden term, because CNN and Fox News' videos are still up there on their YouTube channels, just reporting on the same story. So what's the deal, right? Know what the deal is? Gatekeeping. Google, and we're not sure if if the buck stops with them, but for now we'll just take it that far. Google chose on their own to gatekeep who had access to that information and who could report on it. They decided that Steven Crowder and several other people, wasn't just him, and of course Jennifer the Quartering, were not allowed to report on that story. They said, no, not you. And then they just went over to the more established news sources, Fox, CNN, New York Times, Washington Post, and said, oh, you people can report on it. And then they said, but you schmoes over here, get the fuck out. Now, of course, in the age of the internet, it's easy to do. I mean, all you need is some coder from India doing a few keystrokes, and boom, all those citizen journalists, to be quite nice about it, their YouTube channels are suddenly blocked, their YouTube suddenly deleted, and meantime, so-called, authoritative sources, they're able to report on the very story that these other people originally broke. But not everyone followed Google's lead. Nope. Because Elon Musk, who still controls Twitter, now known as X, he didn't gatekeep. You can go to Twitter right now and still find Steven Crowder's post. And Rumble, same thing. Go to Rumble right now, you can still find Steven Crowder's post. And also Minds and BitChute and Odyssey. You can go to those social media sites now and still find Steven Crowder's original post. So what's the deal here? The deal here is that you have basically the established order. Organizations that weren't even around 100 years ago. No, they weren't. Because when you look at the history of journalism, mass media, I mean, the very idea of journalism only came about thanks to the printing press, and that was back in the 14th century. You know, Gutenberg, yeah. And indeed, electronic mass media only came about in the 1920s. I mean, people tend to forget. CBS, NBC, originally they were radio stations. They weren't television. And CNN only came about around 1979 as an experiment, basically set up by Ted Turner. No, first cable news network. And those later followed by Fox. And Fox only came about thanks to Bruce Hutchison. Yeah, because he wrote this great book called Masters of the Antenna. I had that book. Yeah, it was my father's book. Yeah, because Bruce Hutchison used to work for Nixon. He complained about how if the news media wasn't all like, left of center, political wise, Nixon probably could have kept his job and never would have resigned. And therefore, in his book, Masters of the Antenna, Bruce Hutchison, said that what the news media needed was a news organization that was right of center. And Roger Ailes, he read that book, and he said, you know what, this is a good idea. So he went to old man Murdoch, who ran News Corp out of Australia, and suggested to him, hey, you got the money, bankroll me, and I'll set up a right of center news organization. And Murdoch wrote the check, and boom, Fox News was invented. Of course, now old man Murdoch, that guy, he's like, man, he's got one foot in the grave. And his sons are now taking over News Corp and by extension Fox News. And according to good sources, his sons, I wouldn't say they're Hillary Clinton fans, but they're definitely not right-wingers. So you can probably imagine what will probably happen when old man Murdoch finally kicks the bucket and his two sons finally take over News Corp for good. Yeah. And probably a few short years, Fox News started looking a lot like MSNBC. Yikes. Well, anyway. Yeah. And now, of course, you say, well, hey, Google, it's their company. They don't have to support anyone. Yes, this is true. But of course, thanks to the Twitter files, and of course people who are up to the moment, you know what the Twitter files are, we know that sometimes it's not just the internet company that's doing this on their own. Sometimes they're working hand in glove with the federal government. Because remember all those stories about Hunter Biden's laptop got censored? Yeah, thanks to the Twitter files, we know that it wasn't just Twitter or Google or Facebook that was doing that on their own. No, Uncle Sam, by way of the FBI, was reaching out to these companies and said, you better censor that motherfucking story about that fucking laptop, or we're gonna do something really naughty to you. And these internet companies said, yes, sir, boss. Except, just like the Nixon administration, those internet companies made the mistake of saving the emails they got from the federal government. I mean, anyone who remembers the Nixon administration knows that Nixon should have burned those recordings he made of his White House conversations. And these clowns at Twitter, they should have deleted all the Twitter files before they got kicked out the door by Elon Musk. Otherwise, we never would have known the shenanigans. Those guys were up to their eyeballs with with John Law over there in the Beltway. But hey, history has told us that gatekeeping doesn't work. That eventually news gets out, no matter how hard you try to censor it. Indeed, back during the bad old days of the Cold War, we know that the bad old Soviets, they were constantly censoring the news. And yet there was people who would sneak information out of the old Iron Curtain, and they would get to the outside world. And eventually places like Voice of America, Radio Liberty, or the BBC World Service. So yeah, right now Google and some of these other tech giants are ruling the roost when it comes to censoring the news, censoring information people can get their hands on. But they can't censor the entire internet. They can't ban everyone. Otherwise, we would never have heard of this story at all. So thank God for Rumble, and thank God for Elon Musk and X. So what happens now? I think that what happened with this incident involving Google censoring that information from people like Steven Crowder, like Jeremy from the Quartering, in order to give a leg up to the established news services, even though considering current events, I wouldn't really call them news services anymore. I'd call them propaganda organs, or what's the cliche, state media. Yeah, especially MSNBC. Let's just say this, the internet's a big place. And there's people who are setting up new ways to get information to people all the time. In fact, anyone who's ever heard of Substack knows what I'm talking about. Yeah. So Google can sit there and censor people all they want. But to loosely quote Princess Leia from Star Wars A New Hope, where she and the Grand Moff Tarkin were arguing, the tighter Google squeezes its fist, more and more information squeezes out of it. So yeah, Google, go ahead, censor all you want. You can't stop the news. You can't stop people from talking. And you can't control the entire internet. You can control your part, but you can't control the whole thing. The internet's too big. And when you consider how that one little incident occurred, it makes you wonder if, say, next year when the 2024 election starts kicking off, and purely speaking hypotheticals, someone were to take a pock shot at, say, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., or, wait for it, Trump, who do you think's going to get the news to the outside world first? CNN? MSNBC? Maybe the Daily Mail? Or would it be 1,000, 10,000 people with that little, that little iPhone or Galaxy phone, who just happened to be at the right place at the right time, filming the incident, and then posting it to some social media site? Better buckle up, ladies and children, because you have just entered a new world of citizen journalism, a form of journalism that nobody can control. Not the deep state and not Google. So, Steven Crowder, he's just tip of the iceberg. He is just one of many who are out there right now just waiting for a moment for something newsworthy to happen in front of their noses, for them to take out their little cell phone cameras and film it and then post it ahead of anything that CNN, New York Times, Washington Post could ever get a hold of. Yep. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the world of new journalism. Well, that's all I have to say on it, and that's my opinion.